She waited her whole life to hear him say, "I'm proud of you." But when the moment finally came, it almost came too late. Emily Carter grew up in a quiet, worn-down house on the edge of a small town in Ohio, where the evenings were filled with the sound of distant trains and the soft creak of old wooden floors. After her mother passed away from an illness when Emily was only 6 years old, the world became a much colder and quieter place. Her father, Daniel Carter, was left to raise her alone. He was a man of routine. He woke up before sunrise, worked long hours at construction sites, came home covered in dust and sweat, and sat silently at the dinner table. He never complained, never asked for help, and never spoke much about his feelings. But in his own way, he showed love by making sure Emily never slept hungry, by fixing her broken toys late at night, and by standing in the back of every school event she participated in, even if she never noticed him there. As Emily grew older, she began to understand that her father wasn't like other dads. While her friends were hugged, praised, and encouraged openly, Daniel remained distant, almost like a stranger living in the same house. When she brought home good grades, he would glance at them and simply nod. When she tried to talk about her dreams, he would listen quietly, but never respond with excitement. Deep inside, Emily longed for something more, just a few words of pride, a simple "I love you," or even a warm smile. But those moments never came, and slowly she started building a wall around her own emotions. Despite the emotional distance, Emily was determined to create a better life for herself. She poured all her energy into her studies, often staying up late into the night with books scattered around her small desk. She didn't have expensive resources or private tutors, but she had something stronger, an unspoken desire to prove her worth, not just to the world, but to her father. Years of hard work paid off when she received an acceptance letter from a prestigious university. It was the moment she had dreamed of for so long. That afternoon, she ran home, her heart pounding with excitement, her hands shaking as she held the letter. "Dad, I did it," she said, her voice filled with hope. Daniel looked at the paper, adjusted his glasses slightly, and after a brief pause, said, "That's good." Just two simple words. No smile, no hug, no pride in his voice. Emily forced a small smile, but as she walked back to her room, tears quietly rolled down her cheeks. That was the moment she stopped expecting anything from him. College life was a new chapter, but it wasn't easy. Emily worked multiple part-time jobs to support herself while managing her studies. There were nights when she felt completely alone, sitting by her window, staring at the city lights, wishing she had someone to share her struggles and victories with. She would occasionally call her father, but their conversations remained short and emotionless. "How are you?" "I'm fine." "Eating properly?" "Yes." "Okay." And the call would end. Yet every time she hung up, a small part of her still hoped that one day he would say something more. Over the years, Emily transformed into a strong, independent woman. She graduated at the top of her class, earned respect from her professors, and built a future that many only dreamed of. When her graduation day arrived, she almost didn't invite her father, thinking it wouldn't matter. But something inside her still wanted him to be there. She sent the invitation anyway, not expecting a response. On the day of the ceremony, as Emily walked across the stage in her graduation gown, she scanned the crowd without much hope. But then she saw him, standing awkwardly among the cheering crowd, wearing his old jacket, clapping with a quiet pride that didn't need words. For a moment, time seemed to stop, her heart filled with emotions she couldn't explain. After the ceremony, she walked toward him slowly. They stood there, facing each other, years of unspoken feelings hanging in the air. Daniel didn't say anything at first. Instead, he reached into his bag and handed her a small, old wooden box. Confused, Emily opened it carefully. Inside, she found dozens of her childhood drawings, crayon sketches, school assignments, little notes she had written as a child. On the back of each one, there were dates and small handwritten messages in her father's rough handwriting. Emily's first drawing. She wants to be something big one day. I'm so proud of her. She's stronger than me. Emily's vision blurred as tears streamed down her face. Her hands trembled as she held those memories, realizing that her father had been silently watching, silently caring, and silently loving her all along. "Dad, you kept all of this?" she asked, her voice breaking. Daniel looked down, struggling to find words he had buried for years. "I didn't know how to say things," he finally said, his voice heavy with emotion. "But I felt everything. Every moment I was proud of you." He paused, took a deep breath, and for the first time in her life, he looked directly into her eyes and said, "I'm proud of you, Emily. I always have been." At that moment, all the pain, all the years of silence, and all the unanswered questions melted away. Emily stepped forward and hugged him tightly, holding on to him as if she were that little girl again. Daniel hesitated for a second, then slowly wrapped his arms around her, holding her closer than he ever had before. In that embrace, Emily realized something she had never understood before. Love doesn't always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it hides in quiet sacrifices, in sleepless nights, and in the things left unsaid. And sometimes even the strongest love takes years to finally find its voice. And as she stood there in her father's arms, she finally heard the words she had been waiting her entire life to hear. Not too late, but just in time.